one thing in your talk really interested me. I went to a talk by David Malouf some years ago, who you probably all know is a Queensland writer, who, in my opinion, decried visual arts by saying, well, it wasn't concerned with time in the same way as literature was. I thought, well, that's rubbish. Of course it is. And if you look at any painting, you see the layers in a painting. They're all a description of time. And time passing, of time that's been spent doing painting, time of different layers of reflection, different moods, whatever you like. And this interests me personally more and more in my painting and in my drawing, where I really like drawing with biro, because you can't avoid tracking time with biro, because you can't rub it out. You've just got to live with what time is given you and what you've done. And that is also a description of time, or a recording of time. So that's embedded in the technique of painting and drawing. This time thing, I think, is much more relevant to visual arts and to 2D work than I think is very much understood these days. So I was really interested in
time is a dimension considered by physics. How would you define a dimension?
That's a tricky one, but in the case of space and time, it's what we would call an external degree of freedom. Mm-hmm. And a degree of freedom is just, it's a free parameter, so it's a number which you could pick to be anything from 0 to infinity, say.
So it's not a plane of reference, as it were, at right angles to...
Well, when you consider a system, you consider all the different possible states that the system could be in. And you consider, in order to understand how many states it could be in, you count the degrees of freedom. So for example, considering a chair, well, you could move it a little to the left, and then it's in a new state, or a little more to the left, and so on. And that gives you the left-right degree of freedom, which is, one spatial axis. Same goes for back and forth, up and down. And you could let the chair sit there for 1 second, 2 seconds, and so on. And that gives you the time degree of freedom.
I guess my question is then, follow on from that. If the equation for working speed, like the distance over time, aren't these parameters circular? Like if speed is distance over time, isn't time like speed over distance or something?
Yeah. So in a way, that's what I did in order to get this measurement of 80 years as being a billion kilometers.
Right.
Is I just inverted the equation and used one quantity to get the other instead of doing it the usual way. So because we know the speed of light is a fundamental constant, instead of working out speed, we can say what speed is and then work out the other things in terms of that.
But speed, like, if time is like, if we measure even by an atomic clock, it's the amount of space that something covers at a constant speed. Would that be more or less correct? Yeah. But we can't know what constant speed is necessarily.
Yeah, so in the end you have to pick something which you define to be the constant, and then the other things change with respect to that thing. But there is a certain amount of ambiguity in which thing you pick to be the constant.
So in a sense it's a convention to talk about time and space together. Is a convention?
It is, yeah. And they're not exactly the same either, as it turns out.
This is sort of related to what Ian was just saying. I think it's a sort of chicken and egg question. When a mathematician comes up with a proposition as to how the world of physics works and how the universe operates, is that a metaphor for which you invent the mathematics, or does the mathematics lead you to the picture?
Well, in terms of how progress in physics is made, it usually goes back and forth. Sometimes you'll start with the mathematics and you'll look for ways in which that comes through in the physical world. But I'd say more often you start with an idea in terms of physical things. You just observe what's happening, and then you find the mathematics that fits that behavior. So both.
Really nice connection with art there too. That same kind of juggle goes on the whole time. Almost
Between
they could intermesh with physics, because it certainly is with art. That sometimes maybe the idea that comes first, or then it becomes the analysis of what you're looking at, or maybe it's the analysis of what you're looking at that in the end produces the idea.
Well, I guess art is pretty versatile in that, you can get ideas from anywhere, It needn't be physics, it could be...
Well, what you need by ideas, of course, because ideas in art aren't just wordy, they're visual, but I'm saying there's this intermingling of what you actually see in front of you and actually where you want to take it to, or you maybe don't even know where you're going to take it to.
Right.
Or you want to find out where it's going to take you to.
Well, that's kind of interesting because it's almost like there are properties of the system that has the subject together with the observer. There may be properties of that total system of which neither part is aware, but just through that connection they then come to light.
At the risk of talking too much, I do want to bring you back to this whole thing of what happens with things when you actually look at them. And it's been said many times in art that a painting is not finished until it has a viewer's reaction. I don't quite know how that will tie up with what you've had to say. I certainly personally think that it's true, certainly from the point of view of maybe psychology, whatever, emotional state. A good painting, from my point of view, you can look at one day and see something, another day see something else. And how does that align with kind of things you were talking about, do you think? Or is that just art?
I mean, that is sort of relating, I guess, to the significance of having an observer to give meaning to the thing being observed. So it is. Maybe I've misunderstood.
No, I'm talking. I would add to that their meaning. Doesn't mean that is the only meaning.
Well, I'm not going to make sweeping statements that will be wrong.
No, but it connects up with what you were saying. I'm just trying to see if you think it connects up.
Well, you were talking about ideas, and idea and meaning can be very close.
I'm talking about looking at a painting one day and it meaning one thing, and looking at a painting another day and it meaning something else.
In
Depending
physics, when you talk
Depending
about...
on where you are and you are.
You talk about an instrument having a bias, wouldn't you? Like things like scales might have a bias that you'd have to correct and bring to a 0 point. An instrument might have a margin of error, or might have a bias that you would correct by working out what the bias is, the flaw in the instrument.
But I guess there's always arbitrariness in what level you choose to correct to.
Right, so if it comes to art, then an observer has, in broad sense, a bias, a visual bias, intellectual bias, and that those biases are evolving.
I hesitate to call the word bias, but
Oh,
for me they have
trend,
certain things. But trend,
It can exist on its own without a viewer.
That's correct. So
yeah,
that's-
not prove it exists on its own without a viewer.
It may be the seeds for some ongoing discussion, but perhaps I'll end one last question.
I'm fascinated that a physicist like yourself could pick such great answers. How do you do that? Like, are you a closet artist or something?
I do like to read about it in my spare time. Yeah, I'm a closet artist. I'll confess to that, yes.
And you wander through galleries like Philip Bacon and
Well,
check out...
I follow Sam around. She's my main connection to the
I see. That's the connection.
I learned a lot about art just vicariously.
Can I ask you a final question on that point, which is, how do you see, in scientists, there's certainly some interest in art, how do you see as all being necessarily participative in the work? What's the difference or what's the connection between being a scientist physicists and all that, and someone who undoubtedly appreciates art. What's, in your experiences, intuitive experience of that? Because to approach the world as a science, you have to approach it a certain way. To approach it as an artist, you approach it another way. Is there a connection?
You mean kind of relating to what I was hinting at?
Just personally, yeah, what you...
I would say that, I think this is my answer. I would say in science, the role of intuition and gut feelings is often swept under the rug. But in art, that's given major precedence. That's the primary thing which guides you often. Now, of course, it would be wrong to say that technical ability is not important in art. And in fact, I think people at the Atelier School would agree that it's very important. But certainly not to the extent that technical skill is emphasized in science, where most of the time you think it's all about the technical skill and has nothing to do with your intuition. So I think the connection is purely the observation that both elements are important in both of these disciplines. And what scientists can potentially learn from artists is how to look at the world with a more intuitive eye and to see the equations as being a reflection of nature itself. The real physical world that we live in and physically exist in, rather than just some abstraction. So that's my answer.
So it's the aim of the two disciplines rather than the methods?
Yeah, I'd say the methods diverge. Each tackles it from a different angle, but they're on different sides of a continuous spectrum.
I'm simply talking about Einstein, because he says zero relativity is intuition.
Yes.
That could you travel in space at the same speed as light, and would you see it as a standing wave?
Right.
And intuitively, nothing to do with proving anything, says no, that's not possible. I'm heading them out.
Right.
With the zero relativity show. So it's intuition.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was the classic example of the intuitive physicist, which we have far too few of these days, I would
So would you say that only observed artworks change the world?
Well, if you mean only artworks that are observed by the world can change the world. Yeah, I'd say that has to be true. I mean, it would be hard to think of
What's behind it? Not much.
Well, an unobserved artwork, like...
At
least one person had observed it.
Yeah, if Da Vinci, if Michelangelo painted a painting that no one ever found out about, did it enrich the world?
Can I ask, one final question? Just as a physicist with a much deeper understanding of space and time than most of us here would have, most of us. I guess the idea of the present, like you were saying, there is no place for the present in physics, and yet the present, in human psychology, it's such a big deal. In the idea of meditation and coming back to the now all the time. I think you could sort of relate it, two-dimensional art and relate and doing a picture which is is it a moment in time, like a photograph, right? Or is it something like the idea of a portrait being done over a period of time when you're observing someone over a period of time and it's a conglomeration of things? So there's all these things going on. My question is, so it's an important concept, that idea of the present versus the past and the future. You as a human being, obviously, experiences past and future, and you're anticipating going to Vienna and all of those things, and yet we have in physics, you kind of say, well, that doesn't really have an objective place in this, one of these different forms. My question is, do you feel like there is something that we don't know yet that would is it a matter of neurology and psychology that says that this is what's going on, or is it something more? Because it feels so intensely real, is that just a bias of a weak-minded
It's hard
fool?
to say. There are a lot of physicists who think that you should be able to put the present in explicitly into the equations themselves. There should be something that singles out a particular present moment. But they're a minority, and by and large, their attempts run into serious problems. So that's why I say the present currently has no place in physics. And I would say the general attitude of most physicists is that it's a peculiarity of the way the human mind is structured and how it interacts with the world. And that is the thing that we don't understand. On a computer, we can simulate how two atoms will behave. That's about the extent of our technology. And the human brain is made out of so many atoms that we could never hope to simulate that, even in the near future. It's possible that we might one day understand what it is about the human brain that means we can only perceive the present moment. But I'm not holding my breath.
Oh, that's really good. Seriously, because according to science, there is no present, there is no time, and there is no race, and almost there is nothing. What are we talking for them?
Like the theory of everything.
And working about
If you're unconscious,
you don't perceive any moment.
That's
And
true.
people that are like knocked out for years, they wake up and they can't relate to time having passed. So it's definitely a fabrication.
I'd say that's strong evidence of that. But maybe we should break for one.
Sure.
And feel free to ask me more questions.
can I just say thank you to Jacques for a really interesting talk that has provoked many questions, and I think could provoke many more hours of discussion amongst us all. Thank you very much, Jacques.